I'll be honest with you, I almost didn't share this one. Not because it isn't real, but because of what it implies about how long it had been going on, about how many people might not have noticed. This story comes from a guy I'll call Marcus. He was 26 at the time, living alone in a studio apartment in a mid-sized city in Ohio. He was furnishing the place on a budget, which meant Craigslist was basically his furniture store. He found a listing for a dresser. Solid wood, good condition, reasonable price. The seller's profile was minimal. No photo, no reviews, just a name, Dan, and a phone number. Marcus texted the number, they exchanged a few messages, and arranged for Marcus to come pick it up that Saturday morning. The address was a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing unusual. A man answered the door. Mid-40s, normal-looking, unremarkable. He showed Marcus the dresser in the garage. It looked exactly like the photos. Marcus paid cash, loaded it into his truck, and drove home. He set it up in his bedroom, against the wall facing his bed, unpacked his clothes into the drawers, went about his weekend. 3 days later, Marcus was reorganizing the dresser, pulling out drawers, rearranging things, when he noticed something wrong with the back panel of the top drawer. There was a small circular cutout, clean edges, like it had been drilled deliberately. And fitted into that cutout, nearly flush with the wood, was a lens. A camera lens. Marcus stood there for a long moment, not fully processing what he was looking at. He pulled the drawer completely out of the dresser and flipped it over. Taped to the underside was a small device, roughly the size of a pack of cards, a battery pack, a micro SD card slot, and a lens no bigger than the tip of a pen. The device was motion activated. It had been running on battery power since before Marcus even bought the dresser. He pulled out the SD card with shaking hands and put it into his laptop. There were files on it, video files, organized into folders by date. The oldest folder was dated 8 months before Marcus bought the dresser. Marcus was not the first person to own that dresser. He didn't watch more than a few seconds of the older footage before he stopped. What he saw was enough to tell him this device had been recording people in their bedrooms, while they slept, while they changed clothes, for the better part of a year. He called the police immediately. The detectives who responded told him this was more common than most people know. Hidden cameras sold inside used furniture, appliances, even picture frames. The seller, Dan, was gone. The address Marcus had gone to was not Dan's house. It belonged to an elderly couple who had no idea what their address had been used for. The phone number was a burner. The SD card was taken as evidence. Marcus never found out exactly how many people had been recorded without their knowledge, or whether anyone was ever arrested in connection with it. What he does know is this. The dresser had been facing his bed for 3 days before he found the camera. 3 days of footage that he never watched and immediately handed to police. He sleeps with the light on now, and every piece of used furniture he's owned since then gets taken completely apart before it comes into his home. Her name was Carla. She was 29, between jobs, and had been applying to everything she could find. Job boards, company websites, Craigslist. When you need work, you cast a wide net. The listing looked legitimate. Administrative assistant position, local marketing company, competitive pay. It included a business name, a suite number, a professional email address. Carla sent her resume and received a response within hours, which, looking back, should have been the first thing that gave her pause. The email was polite, professional. It invited her for an in-person interview the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. and gave her an address in a business district downtown. Tuesday morning, Carla dressed professionally, drove downtown, and found the building. It was a real building. a mid-rise office complex with a lobby directory and a security desk. She found the suite number on the directory, took the elevator up. The suite was at the end of a hallway. The door had a frosted glass panel with a company name on it that matched the listing. She knocked. A man opened the door and invited her in. The inside of the suite was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, a laptop open on the desk. No other staff, no reception area, no phone ringing, no sounds of an operating business anywhere. She sat down across from the man. He was well-dressed, calm. He had a printed copy of her resume in front of him. He began asking questions. Normal questions at first. Her work history, her skills, her availability. But then the question shifted. He asked where she lived. Not what neighborhood, her specific address. He said it was for the employment paperwork they'd need to prepare. She hesitated, but gave her street and approximate address. He asked if she lived alone. She said yes, before she could stop herself. He asked what her daily routine looked like, when she left in the morning, when she typically got home. And that was the moment it clicked. She told me later, she said the feeling didn't arrive slowly. It arrived all at once, like cold water. The sparse office, the too quick response to her application, the questions that had nothing to do with the job and everything to do with her movements and her home. She stood up mid-sentence and told him she had forgotten she had another commitment and needed to reschedule. He didn't protest. He didn't try to stop her. He just smiled and said he understood and that she should take care. She walked out of that suite, down the hallway, into the elevator. She didn't run. She told herself not to run until she was outside the building. When she got to her car, she called a friend and told her everything. The friend urged her to call the police, which she did. Detectives followed up and visited the suite. The man was gone. The desk and chairs were still there. The laptop was gone. The business name on the listing and on the frosted glass panel did not match any registered company in the state. The email address she had corresponded with was deleted by the time detectives tried to trace it. The suite had been rented on a short-term basis for cash. Nobody could describe the person who had rented it in enough detail to generate a lead. Carla changed her locks that week. She started varying her route to work. She removed her address from every online platform she could find. The man with her resume and her address and her daily routine was never identified. And she never found out what the interview was actually for. This one is short, but it's the kind of short that sits with you. A guy I'll call Ray listed his car on Craigslist. Standard stuff. Photos, asking price, general location. He used a Google Voice number to avoid giving out his real number to strangers on the internet. He'd done this before. He knew how to be careful. A man contacted him about the car. Seemed normal. Asked the usual questions, mileage, condition, any accidents. Ray answered everything. They agreed on a time to meet so the buyer could look at the car in person. Ray suggested meeting in a public place, a grocery store parking lot near his neighborhood. The buyer agreed. The day of the meeting, the buyer showed up on time. He seemed normal. He looked at the car, looked under the hood, took it for a short test drive with Ray in the passenger seat. When they got back to the parking lot, the buyer said he was interested but wanted to think about it overnight. Ray said that was fine, gave him the Google Voice number to call if he decided to move forward. The buyer nodded. Then he said, almost casually, I might just stop by your place tomorrow if that's easier. You're over on Elmwood, right? The house with the gray fence? Ray told me the temperature of the entire interaction changed in that 1 second. He had never told this man where he lived. His Craigslist listing showed only a general area, not a street, not a neighborhood, not a description of his house. Ray kept his face neutral. He said something non-committal. I'll reach out if we decide to move forward, and walked to his car. He didn't sell the car that week. He blocked the number. He filed a report with police, though he knew there wasn't much they could do. No law had been broken. Yet. But here's the part that I can't stop thinking about. Ray went home that night and walked around the outside of his house. He checked his fence, he checked his windows, he checked his doors, and on the back window, the one that faced the alley, he found a small scratch in the corner of the glass. Fresh, like something had been pressed against it recently. Someone had been watching his house before he ever posted that Craigslist listing. The buyer wasn't just a buyer. He had done his research. He had found Ray's address through whatever means. A previous listing, a public record, a reverse search on information Ray hadn't even realized was public. And he had been to Ray's house. The car sold 2 months later. Different buyer, different platform. Ray moved the following year.
Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, whatever platform you use, the basic exchange seems simple. But the person on the other side of that listing is a stranger. And strangers, as these stories show, are not always what they appear to be. Trust your instincts. Meet in public. Never give out your home address to someone you don't know. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Subscribe if you're new. I put out true horror stories every single week. And if something like this has happened to you, drop it in the comments. I read all of them. Stay safe, stay smart.